Let's move to WA and the climate sooks that decided to storm Parliament here. That basically 23-year-old toddlers who, think that the 21st century is the worst thing ever, but because mummy and daddy worked very hard in the 20th century, they get to go back to very nice houses after doing things like this today, where they decided to try to disrupt the Parliament here in Western Australia. They did so in Perth, and I know we fuel the trolls, but still, these trolls need to know I think even people on the left think that they're morons. What do you think here, Bronwyn? Yet again, this is part of the game, which is if you don't give us exactly what we want, which is, the demodernisation of Australia, throw in the decolonisation while you're at it, hand over the keys to anyone else, and you've got 14 days to do it, and I think, the 14 days is up, so the terrorism campaign begins.
There's an appropriate old Bohemian saying, the pup barks and the moon is not afraid. And really, these are the pup barking. And they really don't matter. But they remind me very much of the old demonstrations we used to have in the 80s for unilateral nuclear disarmament. And they were the same tactics, the same disruptive tactics. They used to go out to Pine Gap and try and disrupt that. It's just, it seems to be a phenomenon that pokes up its head every generation or so. But to take But the real thing is arrest them and put them in jail. They are criminals and leave them there.
Yeah. But, Nicholas, as I said about this too, I mean, this is the same crowd that, as Bronwyn says, it used to be about, nuke-free zones everywhere, and these are the people who infiltrated councils and got their little protests up that way. The same crowd that was the Save the Whales, the same mob that was anti-globalisation, the same mob that turns up to a demonstration about anything and will turn it into something to do with Aboriginal land rights. Here's the point. They are unfocused, ill-disciplined smartasses.
Well, so look, as you know, I lean in on climate change, and the good news is that the McGowan government in Western Australia leans in as well. They've got a 50%, cut target.
Not
there.
enough,
It's quite
apparently.
Ambitious. And look, generally I support protest, but I think what they did today should be absolutely condemned. But where I will take issue is with you trying to lump these protesters in with all other protesters. I think one of the things we should celebrate in this country is the right of people to protest. That's what makes us different to countries like China, OK? And I take particular issue with you comparing these people to the no nukes protesters
they
back in the 1980s.
Exactly the same way. Exactly the same way.
People.
But no, it's not. I mean, the fact
Get
is...
the stills up.
It was the same silly rubbish.
Not, because I know some of the people involved in those anti-nuclear protests back in the 1980s. They started a group called a Group Against Nuclear Non-Proliferation, or for Nuclear Non-Proliferation, and they won a Nobel Prize for it, OK?
Oh, well,
so
they give them
before
away
you start
quite
going and
freely
lumping in the people we saw today with Australians who won a Nobel Prize, maybe you should know your Australian history a little better.
Nicholas, there are
can I also just say here, when we talk about nukes...
There are also some nutters.
Yeah, when we talk about nukes as well, don't forget that that whole deal, the grand history that was made, of course, between, say, Gorbachev and Reagan. Well, that's all now in tatters because the Russians have effectively walked away from that. Nothing to do with Trump, by the way. Of course, if it was something to do with Trump, the left would still be carrying on that he was the one who tore that system down. So perhaps a Nobel Prize that may need to go back in the mail. But anyway, let's talk about
hit you guys with small facts again. But if you look at the number of missiles that were deployed through Western Europe and Eastern Europe, for that matter, in the 1980s, compared to today, you will find thousands of warheads have been removed.
Nicholas, was unilateral
Russia may be
nuclear
run
disarmament,
by
which was meant to be by America
dictator,
alone.
but you can't say we're back to where we were in the 80s. That's just not right.
Yes, we can, because they're the same people who have got the same ideological bent. They were saying it was America that had to unilaterally disarm, not anybody else, and they used to cause havoc all over the country. But in the end, Reagan fixed it with a policy called peace through strength. And he went on to implement it, and the whole movement came to a great grinding end. So
I'm
this
sorry,
one will
Bronwyn,
too.
I'm sorry, Paul. You're now making claims that are provably wrong, OK? There are less nuclear warheads in Europe today than there was
But that's got nothing to do with the protesters or unilateral disarmament.
Reagan era.
Can we teach you
Guys, on the other side of the country, everyone's on satellite delay here. When you hear the fat bloke with the beard, I need you all to pull back so I can try to drive this train, OK? rather than the side. I mean, how we got to nuclear proliferation as the side issue here?
Nuclear,
but simply,
as he calls it. Nuclear.
Would we? Yeah, correct. But okay. Would we all not agree? Would we all not agree that they're okay? I'm going to change topic. All right. We've got a long way to go.
Really?
And
Did we get? I'm really just. I honestly didn't get my go on these people. I'm very sad. All right.
Well,
okay.
James, feel free to talk about these people, or we can go back into how I pronounce the N word.
The stills. There are the stills of the actual people. Half of them were dressed like the kids were dressed at Melbourne State College in the 90s. Look at them. I mean, I actually looked at it and I thought, oh, that's a photo from the 70s at first, and then I realised, oh God, that's still Perth. Like, Perth is still the 1970s on some level, looking at that. Look at that. Come on. That's not 2019. They have just used a stock photo from 25 years ago. Don't try and tell me that's today. Because if it is, my God, it's like a giant retro park over there. I want to go for a holiday in 1978.
Yeah, but hang on. But also, remember how I was saying that these protests, and the central point that I was making, which is that these protests always conflate whatever the issues are of the day. Did you see the Aboriginal flag in the middle of that one? What does that have to do with climate change, Nicholas? That was the point I was making. It's the same gaggle that'll protest for change the date, that are the same people that'll turn around and be part of Extinction Rebellion. They are not a fresh group of people automatically attracted to a single issue.
Well, I mean, look, you may try and say this is the professional protest crowd.
Well, so what's that flag you can see on screen?
Well, there's one flag amongst hundreds of people. I mean, anyway, the bigger point here is that they misbehaved badly today. I condemn them for that just as much as you do. But I'm all for people being able to protest in this country, and I'm all for governments taking action on climate change and the people of Australia getting out in the streets and saying, government, we want you to do more.
Can I just, before we move on this, can I note how Nick has revealed himself to be a close student of Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament? Nick, did you write an essay about this at uni? Did you write an essay about it at school? Like, you seem very well informed about this.
Well, because when the group from Melbourne won the Nobel Peace Prize for their founding of that nuclear non-proliferation agreement, I talked about it quite a lot. It was a cause for celebration across Australia.
Oh.
And then, of course, tonight we have sort of Bronwyn, not with a firm grip there on some facts there about Australia's role in that great effort.
Did you
try
tell
to lump the people today in with that group, the group that involved in those protests?
Did people in the right of the ALP know about your affection for this sort of stuff? I mean, you may have ended up in the wrong faction there, mate. Like, I'm slightly concerned that you're outing yourself as not really being quite correct line here.
Well, I'm anti-nuclear.
Well, don't forget he called himself a socialist 2 weeks ago.
No nukes, I say.
James, I think you were right. The clothes they're wearing, I think they inherited those clothes from the anti-nuclear the anti-nuclear
Do you reckon
people.
they washed them first? Did they wash them, or did they just...
They don't look like they've been washed first. I think they've been preserved.